Project Eden's Garden. Hot damn, I did not know a good way to begin this one. You could probably tell, judging by the footage, but Project Eden's Garden is a Danganronpa-inspired fan game that recently uploaded its first chapter for download. And yep, you heard that right, it's a fan game. This isn't a video. This is a real, bona fide game that you can play on your PC. Assuming your PC is high-end enough. 16 gigs of RAM isn't really standard for, say, the laptop you bought to use Google Docs with for college, but I just so happen to own a big boy gaming PC that I bought for the purpose of recording buttery smooth cookie run footage that my laptop failed to provide. So me and Eden's Garden are chillin'. If you and Eden's Garden are not chillin', however, you can watch the game through a non-commentated Let's Play on the project's official channel. I would recommend playing it if you can, but that's understandably not an option for everyone. Enough yapping about PC specs and all that. Let's get to the game. Because, my god, the game. If the video lengths of the playthrough on the official channel didn't cue you in, this is a long adventure, even in the state it's in. If you're busy with school or work, this will definitely keep you occupied for a few days if you play it in chunks of a few hours at a time. But unlike, say, Danganronpa V3, I didn't feel as though the game tried to needlessly pad out for extra runtime. And that's the thing about Danganronpa. There's a lot of bull that did not need to be there. The Monocubs? My god, I do not care. Bring out the humans. Eden's Garden succeeds in eliminating a lot of the little things that irked me in the Danganronpa games. No stupid mini-mascots, no character whose entire personality is being a pervert, and no character that's clearly meant to be the butt of the joke by looking super out of place in comparison to the art style of everyone else. Oh, and they let the women wear pants. Pants! Like, I know the official Danganronpa characters mostly wear school uniforms to represent their former schools, but why, for the love of God, would you put the ultimate swordswoman in a skirt? And if Peko and Sakura really did go to the same school, and they're wearing their old school's uniforms, why do they have totally different color schemes? Admittedly, Danganronpa character design is not the greatest. Another thing I appreciate with Eden's Garden is that all the characters are given ages. If you know me, you know I come from the Cookie Run fandom, and age discourse is rampant there, so I'm glad to see it nipped in the bud by having explicit ages set. Speaking of ages, I'm not sure if it's because most of the cast is composed of adults, but the group as a whole seems smarter than the cast of the mainline games. The start of a lot of Danganronpa trials deals with you having to refute something super obviously incorrect, which, like, I get, because it would be unfair to sling the hard stuff on players right away, but it can get really annoying after a while. Take Jett, for example, a character who's currently in more of a comedic relief role. When he first introduces himself to you, he reasons that this could be an extreme haunt, an event that could begin with a simulated kidnapping that each of them consented to by deciding to go to Eden's Garden Academy. I know for a fact that Yasuhiro Hagakure would not be coming to such an evidence-based conclusion. One final thing before I segue into talking about the characters individually. I really appreciate that Eden's Garden doesn't go out of its way to make every character crazy, so to speak. Danganronpa V3 especially felt like it had set out on a mission to make the wackiest, most fantastical characters out there. So much so that Tsumugi had this weirdly enforced speech pattern about how plain she was, only to end up with her being divisively abnormal. Meanwhile, I can tell that people like Desmond and Jett are regular people outside of their talents. At least for the most part. This helps me empathize with the cast more because they feel like people I could meet in real life. And speaking of the cast, it's time for the individual characters section. Things are gonna be pretty spoiler heavy from here on out. If I've piqued your interest in the game and you want to see it for yourself, here's one last chance to bail out. I'll give you 3 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Now for those of you still here, I'll be providing a tier list at the end, but in hopes of enticing you to keep watching, I'm going to run through each character and give a few quick thoughts about them. Starting with... So when I first found out about Super Danganronpa 2 having an ultimate gamer who happened to be a girl, I got really excited. But then she was basically a sleepy waifu and the whole gaming thing was an afterthought. Cassidy gives me everything I wanted to have with Chiaki. Her love of gaming is woven into her personality. She attends tournaments, she streams, and she donates most of her money. She's a little overzealous about the bourgeoisie in her intro, but she cools it down afterwards. She's far from the brightest bulb in the cast, but I don't think she's as unintelligent as some of the canonical Danganronpa characters, even though her trial theories tend to be less than stellar. If I were in a killing game, I'd probably be acting a lot like her, intelligence-wise and all. Though this isn't related to anything in-game, I wanted to take the time to shout out Sabrina Twyla's YouTube channel. She's Cassidy's voice actress, and her channel has a lot of fun Eden's Garden-themed videos. As someone who loves fanfiction, the Cassidy and Wenona fanfic reading video especially cheered me up when I really needed it. I don't really have much to say on Cassidy as an individual otherwise. I like her and her perspective on things as a video content creator and gamer a lot, but she's not all that plot relevant yet. Our next character, however, is a lot more plot relevant. Damon Maitsu is annoying. A well-written character, yes, but super annoying. I don't like pessimistic characters. It's why Hinata has always been my least favorite Danganronpa protagonist. But Hinata doesn't hold a candle to just how pessimistic Damon Maitsu is. On paper, the biggest thing separating Damon from the mainline Danganronpa protagonists is his talent. While Shuichi, and Kaede for as briefly as she lasted, did have talents, Damon has a superiority complex because of his talent. Right out the get-go, he lets you know that he is a prodigy in a sea of mediocrity, and people like him are going to change the world. This extreme faith in his talent leads him to be extremely judgmental. He's quick to deem certain talents inadequate, looking upon those who hold them poorly. In fact, he's judgmental as soon as he sees his classmates, referring to them as freaks before he knows any of their names. How entitled! One of the worst instances of this is how he treats Jean in his FTEs, saying he's lying and refusing to acknowledge his talent in favor of calling him a pirate, among other snide remarks. I'm aware other cast members call Jean a pirate too, it just feels particularly vindictive from Damon. I always end up smirking when someone gets under his skin, because, quite frankly, he deserves it. I distinctly remember in my playthrough of Chapter 1 how he laments about the distrust the rest of the cast have in him and Eva, and I couldn't help but say to myself, that's your fault, man. You're the one that inspired other people to judge you. Sure, Wolfgang exacerbates this, but I really think he could have either avoided or at least mitigated the damage to his reputation. Now, there are some things I do like about Damon. Carlito Lopez does an excellent job of portraying his haughty, done-with-your-crap attitude. I love his sprites. His embarrassment sprite is one of my favorites. His "oh really" sprite is really good too. Also, for as pessimistic as he is, there is some realism to him. I think there's a fine line between blind faith and needless pessimism, and he definitely falls into the needless pessimism category, but I appreciate that he acknowledges the possibility of murder. On the topic of realism, we have to bring up his hypocrisy. It's not just something unique to Beneath the Veil of Hypocrisy, it's something we see in the prologue, too, such as when he first meets Wenona. I appreciate how it's outright emphasized in the trial. He judged and distrusted others, yet put so much of his faith in Eva. I really like the pathos thing going on with him too. I hope that learning to trust and believe in others and acknowledge them outside of their talents ends up being a part of his character arc. I think Damon said it best. Desmond is normal. Sure, the 5 hours of exercise every day is a bit much, but socially he's super chill. He might be the ultimate marksman, but he really feels like just some guy. I would not bat an eye if someone like him showed up in one of my college classes. I really haven't got much to say about Desmond. His reactions are warranted, he's got a sound head on his shoulders, and I appreciate him trying to prevent the killings by initiating the bunk buddy system. He's not my favorite, but I do like him. Diana sits in a really interesting position among the cast. Where Wolfgang sows distrust against Eva and Damon, Diana stands in opposition, encouraging them to be included in the group. One phrase in her bio card that stands out to me is how she's made it her goal to help everyone discover the best version of themselves. This leads me to conclude that her kind nature and tendency to see the good in others is something that influences her character regardless of the situation, i.e., regardless of the killing game. In a fun twist of things, I think she may end up being Damon's rival for the rest of, if not a good portion of the game. Where Damon has further solidified his doubt in others after Eva's murder, Diana has strengthened her trust in them. Speaking of the murder, one of Diana's most important character moments thus far is her post-trial chameleon speech. What struck me wasn't the speech itself, but rather the lack of reactions from everyone else. Where Wolfgang's speeches roused everyone to action, Diana's speech is met with crickets. I think this will cement her as too naive for the rest of the cast. After all, it's hard to believe in the good nature of others after someone betrayed the group and murdered someone. Diana is the second youngest of the cast at 17, so I wonder if this speech will cause her to be infantilized by her peers, who will now take on more critical, doubtful perspectives. All of the members of the cast have some sort of animal symbolism. I've neglected to mention this so far because it's too early in the story to talk about everyone's animal, but Diana is someone whose symbolism has already been made clear. The chameleon is most well known for its ability to camouflage by changing into different colors. We've already seen Diana be able to do this in a more literal sense by hiding the wounds she received during her altercation with Wolfgang, but I also think that this is something Diana does in a more metaphorical sense. To explain this further, I'd like to bring up Imitation and Echo, two art series by lead artist N. Greentail, who I'll be referring to as Nefast for the remainder of this video. While these pieces are referred to as soft or blurry canon, Nefast knows the happenings of the entire narrative, so they're based in canon at least. The Imitation series has each featured character responding to the prompt, "What are you?" And Diana's answer is a change. This photo looks innocent enough, a girl staring back at her own reflection, but take a look at her wrist here. Her chameleon bracelet is missing. I believe this reflected Diana to be her past self, and the more out-of-frame bracelet wearing Diana to be her current self. The outfit she wears here can also be seen in her Echo pieces, and she seems to be absolutely terrified of her past, or her true self, as the title implies. I think that Diana is someone who seeks validation by being liked by everyone, changing her colors to reflect either those she admires or to present herself in a way that will have her avoid making enemies. Though I wouldn't go as far as saying she's entirely conscious of this fact. I think this is why she volunteers herself to be Eva's roommate. She doesn't want Eva to be at odds with her. Still, as I said earlier, I don't think she did this with selfishness in mind. Human actions can be multifaceted, after all. She wants to be like Wolfgang, who doesn't want to be like someone else. Who will she be when she can no longer change and has no one's approval to seek? That's what I want to know. Eloise is hard to make a judgment on because she's taken more of a backseat role in the story thus far, but I will say that I like her as of now. When you meet her, you go, oh, okay, this is the shy character, so I guess she's gonna be this game's Toko, Mikan, Chapter 1 Shuichi. And she is like that, but only to a certain extent. Being the ultimate fencer, Eloise isn't someone who will crumble in a battle, and she makes that clear. In your very first free time event with her, she goes out of her way to say that she won't go down without a fight. But I think her greatest fighting asset might not be her brawn, but her brains. I believe that Eloise's true strength comes in the form of knowing when to pick her battles. Take the blackmail motive. When Grace singles her out, she's quick to relent. Grace has shown that she's the combative type, so I think she did this because she wanted to spare herself from whatever Grace might have done if she were further provoked. For the record, I do think Eloise would beat Grace in a fight, but she was in the right to do what she could to avoid it. Another display of her intellect comes during the investigation, when she goes to check in Wolfgang's dorm with Damon and Desmond. When the guys can't get through to her, it's ultimately Eloise who makes Grace give in with the threat of summoning Tozu. Without her, Wolfgang's room would have remained mystery to the rest of the group. And, of course, I have to acknowledge her final free time event with Damon. I'm really proud of her for standing up to him. He is a prick, and she totally had the right to say it. I also think it's important that she walks off after she explodes at him in order to avoid escalating the situation. Seriously, if you haven't given Eloise's free times a read, you definitely should, even with their admittedly awkward moments of silence. If I had to pick one word to describe how I feel about Eva, the word I would choose would be intrigued. She's got this image of herself in her head that she wishes to portray, and as seen time and time again, will go to extreme lengths to maintain. But as Damon has a habit of commenting, sometimes her actions end up leaving you more confused than anything else. I've always had trouble enjoying characters that feel effortlessly cool, like Kirigiri, for example. Maybe it's because I just can't relate, but the coolness and poise of their actions reads as unrealistic to me. Eva's attempts to be cool either go unnoticed or are seen as nonsensical, which makes her character all the more believable to me. I have to commend the team for the talent reveal twist. Where Maki Harakawa went out of her way to hide her dangerous talent with a mundane one, Eva does the opposite, using the moniker of Ultimate Liar to disguise the fact that she's actually a mathlete. Keep in mind that Eden's Garden started development in 2020, so this secret has also been kept from the fandom for 4 entire years, which is just the icing on the top of the cake. This reveal might have been incredibly traumatic to her, but from the standpoint of the viewer, it is downright hilarious. I could not stop laughing when Wenona revealed the truth. As funny as this is, however, this moment really speaks to just how warped Eva's perception of herself is. Keep in mind, she lied about her talent before the killing game was initiated. She felt the need to keep her guard up and protect herself when the worst harm she'd experienced was being kidnapped and put to sleep. Which, I mean, is valid, but definitely not how I'd have gone about it. One of the most notable things about Eva is her name, which bears an obvious resemblance to the biblical figure Eve. In the Bible's book of Genesis, Eve is noted as being the second human, created from the rib of Adam to be his companion. She's tempted by a serpent to do the only thing God has forbidden, eat fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. She then shares this fruit, which is often symbolized as an apple, with Adam, and then God expels them both for their hubris. In the Catholicism I was raised on, this is the source of original sin, which all humans are supposedly born with. Prior to researching for this video, I could have sworn that the serpent depicted in the story was a form taken by the devil, but nope, that's not mentioned anywhere. The serpent's just an animal God made, more cunning than the rest. This just so happens to fit better with Damon, who has a snake as his animal motif. And just like the myth, there's a big old tree in the game, and it leads to the trial grounds, where you learn the knowledge of good and evil, who is spotless and who has become the blackened. Assuming that eating the apple has been translated into committing murder, we run into a divergence here, because it's not Damon that convinces Eva to kill, it's Tozu, but more on him later. Like Eve, Eva states that she was tricked, targeted by Tozu's math puzzle. But also like Eve, she was not forced into solving the puzzle, or eating the forbidden fruit. Singled out, yes, but she had her own agency in deciding to solve it. She also states that she was forced to kill, but knowing that she's lied in the past, I'm not quite sure that's the truth. That or it could be something like in V3, where Monokuma specified that the students forced to participate would die, when the cast hadn't known they'd all signed up for the game willingly. Eva is someone who inherently distrusts others, believing that everyone around her hates her. This delusion is so solidified in her mind that even when it's proven untrue by Diana, she refuses to yield. In her attempts to make herself seem stronger, she ultimately ends up making herself look even weaker than had she just been honest. She attracts what she deals onto others, doubt and mistrust. And in an ironic fashion, she meets her end covered up by the truth of her talent, with protractors and rulers and compasses. Outside of her crime, I do like that she's chronically online. I also quite like the direction that was taken with her voice. It's got this raspy gravel to it, as opposed to a generic aloof girl voice. Also, that breakdown. Her angry sprites are absolutely incredible. Mad props to the art team. Overall, Eva is someone I've come to like more and more as I spend my time working on this video. She's actually ended up becoming one of my favorites as time has gone by. Her self-destructive tendencies that end up isolating her are something I can relate to, as I found myself doing similar things in my own times of turmoil. Not saying they're the right actions to take, especially not the murder, but they're ones I can see the reasons behind. I can also relate to her desire for attention, but on her own terms. Wanting to be known for her accomplishments, but being defined by her title. For having such difficulty connecting to others in real life. Perhaps, in another life, she'd be able to break down her walls, and not be so afraid and wary of others. Maybe, in such a life, she could see how truly she's loved. Grace is someone who instantly reminded me of another character, Miyu Iruma. Both are abrasive, brusque girls with weird pink blonde hair who aren't afraid of cussing someone out. Watching scenes with Grace play out made me think to myself, wow, this is a lot like if they had Iruma, but without all the weird not safe for work stuff. But Grace is different from Iruma, and I intend to highlight that. For one, where Iruma tends to cave and become submissive when provoked, Grace puts up her shields. Her symbol is the rabbit, and I've seen things online that say rabbits are very territorial, and that they need to live with another rabbit. Both are things in line with what we've seen of Grace thus far. The other rabbit in this case would be Wolfgang, who Grace is almost always with. By having them wake up together when they first meet, they're forced to interact. I honestly think that, if not for this setup, they might not have gotten close at all, since they're not the type you traditionally expect to mesh. I'm really curious as to how grief will be addressed in the second chapter. In the spirit of keeping the action moving, it tends to get glossed over in the main Danganronpa games. As the closest person to Wolfgang, she's someone I'm super interested in seeing in Chapter 2. Will she put up a strong front in front of the others, or will she collapse under the weight of Wolfgang's absence? I have no idea, but I'm excited to see what direction she goes in. Someone I'm mutuals with on Twitter pointed out how her aggression may also be influenced by her talent, which I thought was interesting, so now I'm stealing his thought. She's in a new game, and golf is an old man's sport, as Wolfgang put it. She wants to show her competitors she's not someone to be messed with. Even though I doubt she thinks of the killing game as a game, she's determined to make sure she isn't underestimated. I believe she has the potential for a great character arc. Though, I gotta say, it's funny how the girl named Grace is perhaps the least graceful out of the entire cast. Ingrid Grimwall, my beloved. My god. My affection for Ingrid is off the charts. She's been my favorite since before I knew her name. I hear a little howdy or a hiya, and I start clapping like a seal. I even have a little Ingrid shrine in my bedroom. In my time on Twitter, I've noticed that she's seemed to fade into the background in most people's minds, which I think is a real shame. Because beyond being a pretty buff woman, she's got a lot going for her right now, even though most of it isn't explicitly stated. It's there, but you gotta search for it. Ingrid is someone who is constantly parentified, but a lot of it is through her own merit. No one tells her to go out of her way to keep an eye on Toshiko, she does it on her own. It was her idea to do everyone's laundry. And while doing said laundry, she says something very important. This is the first time in a long time she's gotten to shoulder the load. She's someone with younger siblings, something she reveals in her free time events, who is used to working alone. She even gets embarrassed asking Damon for help with the laundry. I'd like to bring up Ingrid's imitation art here, which is her surrounded by hands. She's at the center of tons of people, and it's up to her to stand tall, to carry them metaphorically, or even literally as barbells. Another piece I'd like to look at is this Halloween 2023 art, where Ingrid is dressed as Luisa Madrigal from Encanto. Luisa, who is the strong one, given all the burdens of her siblings, afraid to crack under the pressure of it all. Speaking of pressure, we do see her break, albeit very briefly. It's easy to forget about since it's right before Diana's chameleon speech, but we do see her crying after Eva's execution. But after Toshiko and Kai show weakness, she covers her own feelings up and tries to console them. In the voice line that plays, she says, "I can't be like this." She's someone who puts others above herself, even in tense, emotional moments like these. The game's rumored to take place in September of 2024, since that month lines up perfectly with the calendars in the dorms. And with Ingrid's birthday being in August, that means she just turned 18. Ingrid is barely an adult, yet she's already making a mom of herself. I can't help but wonder if that's all she's ever known. Ingrid, my beloved, you are so young, yet trying to behave as if you were 25. I hope your writers give you the grace to have a moment to be the tall child that you truly are inside. My original intention was to start off Jean's section by saying something like, DeLamer? Like, of the sea? That is not a name you could get away with naming a real person. But then I checked the wiki where they have name lore for every character, and apparently DeLamer is a sure name that at least one human has had. So the more you know, I guess. Jean is a character that hasn't really attached to anybody too closely at this point in the story, so it's hard to place him in group dynamics. He does seem to like Cassidy though, as mentioned in his free time events, and he has her gather everyone up on their first full day at the academy. But you really gotta squint to notice that. One thing I think about a lot is, ironically enough, not a part of the game, but rather part of a Discord server event. Held in 2021, Eden's Island was a Survivor-style event where the cast donned their summer outfits and competed with outcomes decided in part by stats, in part by luck, and in part by viewer votes. And in those stats, Jean ranked a 1 in intelligence, which absolutely baffles me. Because I've always seen him as someone with a good head on his shoulders. He's the first to notice the odd smell during Wolfgang's investigation. And during the prologue, he's the one who investigates the body. Sure, it was in part because nobody else wanted to do it, but I think that also cements how he knows Tozu is serious about things. Don't do as he orders, and consequences could be coming the group's way. It's possible that the stats are no longer accurate, or that they solely were in relation to the Eden's Island challenges, having no relation to the killing game. So maybe it's possible his intelligence stat would be higher in this situation. Or that he's more street smart, and the intelligence stat measured academic intelligence. Or perhaps I'm overthinking this. I'm not the type to make specific Danganronpa predictions because I don't like being wrong, which I often am, but I have a hunch that he, at the very least, won't be the next victim. I can't make heads or tails of him yet, so I think he needs to stick around long enough for some reveals to be made. I like that he has the wildberry hair thing going on. I like that he makes elephant toothpaste in one of his FTEs, and I hate the way Damon treats him. I hope some of the more combative students put some respect on his name, because he's a good guy. So, I gotta start off Jett's section with another shout out to the art team. Incredible work managing to make a character with no visible facial features so expressive. Jett sits in a similar position to Desmond in my mind, though with a higher comedic stat. He's another character that reacts to things in ways that I could see myself or another real human reacting. I like that he's geeky, and I like that he's trying to reach out to Mark. Jett and Mark are giving me real abyssal Saimota vibes right now. I'm shipping them low-key. I think that whatever's going on under that mask is going to be integral to a case later. Whether that's with him as a victim, a culprit, or just a witness, I have no idea. But like with Grace, he's someone I'm eagerly watching for change. We know Mark and Jett are bunk buddies, so I have to wonder, has Mark seen him unmasked? I doubt he can sleep in that thing. Without being drugged, of course. And if he can, well, mad props to him. Kai is someone I have difficulty identifying my feelings on. I've alluded to it before on my channel, but I'm someone who's deeply intertwined with fandom. As such, my fandom experiences change how I process the media I've encountered. And with Project Eden's Garden, Kai just so happens to be the character that fandom has influenced my views on the most. In canon itself, Kai was someone who was just kind of there for me. Sure, he was more prominent than other characters, being assigned as Damon's roommate and all, but his personality wasn't one that appealed to me personally. I could totally wrap my head around why others liked him though. The thing about Twitter, my personal main social media at this point, is that it catches on to what you like very quickly. So as soon as I had happened to like a few posts about Eden's Garden, it was blasting me with content of the game. And a few of those posts happened to be about Kaimon, the ship of him and Damon. I was first being fed these posts right around when I was just beginning Chapter 1. So in my head I was like, okay, there's gotta be some sort of reason why this is being shipped, but what is that reason? And then I got to the part where they got sorted out into being bunk buddies and I was like, oh, okay, this is where that comes from. There was a tweet going around where Nefast mentioned someone anonymously saying the ship was forced down people's throats in canon, and I don't think that's true, just as Nefast said. But it's being fed to me a lot in fandom, and personally, I'm not on board just yet. The thing is, when you see a character you only feel so-so about only in shippy contexts, it can become kind of hard to separate the character from the ship. When I think about Kai, I think about Kaimon, which I don't hate, but I've started to see so much of that I've grown a little tired of it. No hate to those that ship it, though. I want to make that clear. Unfortunate as it is, though, because ship-related content is the only fandom stuff I seem to get concerning Kai, it's dampened my feelings on him a little bit. It's also made it harder for me to see him as a character outside of how well he does or doesn't mesh with Damon. This isn't to say that it's completely impossible for me to see him as an individual, however. For instance, I found it interesting to see just how much about him isn't true. We know that he edits his photos thanks to Grace, we know that some things on his report card aren't real, and his description upon release as a cunning manipulator doesn't line up with how he's been portrayed so far. And did you know his name is an anagram of Makoto Naegi? Yeah, I didn't know that either. None of those things have to do with Damon as far as I'm aware. All in all, Kai is someone I have many feelings on. We've still got a lot of story to go, and even if he is the Chapter 2 victim, he's still got some time to shine and do something that completely changes my opinion on him. I have absolutely no clue where his character arc is going, so I'm just gonna buckle up and wait for the roller coaster to start. In total contrast to Kai, we have Mark, who literally has less than 5 minutes of voice lines despite surviving the trial. Incredible. This guy just radiates awkward, and I really love that for him. I relate to that a lot. When I have to socialize with a bunch of new people, this is how I act. I mean, I probably would have given my name earlier, but the whole having terrible conversations and doing nothing beyond what you're asked to bit is totally me. I'm having trouble formulating my words here, so instead I'd like to end this section by showing you a short edit I made that encapsulates my feelings about Mark. Okay, so editor's note real quick. I just happened to notice that the more pissed off Mark is at you, the less his headphones glow, which I think is really funny. Okay, now roll the clip.
It's some people hating big time, but it's people hating on this campus. You are freaking African Americans, plus Mark. You know what I'm saying? Which I'm rocking with Mark because Mark is rocking with us.
Toshiko Kayura is a child. At first I was thinking this might be a case of character that looks like a child but is actually a lot older, but we've got confirmation that she is 14. Thank you for clearing that up, Eden's Garden developers. I've started my section about her with this fact as opposed to an opinion because her status as a child is at the crux of her character. From the moment we see her, it's obvious that she wants to be taken seriously. She tries to jump into a leader role, and she succeeds for a bit with the introductions, but even during them, she's belittled by Grace, and only succeeded in avoiding Jean because the main building's exit door could be locked. Every other time she tries to assert herself and make herself useful, she's quick to be shot down. I think her striving for adulthood contrasts well with Ingrid, who I presume to be naturally drawn to Toshiko because of her age and need to be a parent. Ingrid is someone who Toshiko can look up to because the cast agrees with her assertions and believes her to be strong. It creates a unique contrast, someone who is constantly seen as older than they are versus someone who is constantly seen as a child younger than they are. It doesn't matter how hard Toshiko tries, nor how elevated her vocabulary is, everyone else sees her as a child that needs to be protected. When you're someone who is so eager to grow up and be taken seriously, you may end up finding that, once that has happened, you never truly indulged in the childhood that was right beside you because you had become so pigeonholed in adulthood. Perhaps, in her character arc, Toshiko will learn that she does not need to take things so seriously, and there is a joy to be found in growing up slowly. Perhaps she will learn that no act can substitute the lived, learned experience of being someone who has lived on Earth for 17, 18, or even 20 or more years. On a more comical note, whenever I see her, I can't help but wonder how tired her arm must be from holding up that fan all the time. I wonder if she'll insist on covering herself up with her fan in a life or death situation, or if she'll drop it to have use of both of her hands. Either way, I hope that sort of thing doesn't happen, but I have absolutely no idea what will. Ulysses. I quite like Ulysses. He was my best boy for quite a while, actually. I happen to like another historian, museum curator type character, so perhaps that's what initially drew me to Ulysses. I don't know how many people this sentence will end up making sense to, but in my experiences with him, I ended up seeing him as the result of what would happen if you put a Claire cookie and Chiaki Nanami into a blender. This guy would be the resulting milkshake. When Ingrid wouldn't let me hang out with her during my initial playthrough, he's who I turned to. And in watching the free times of his that I missed on YouTube, I only grew more interested. See, Ulysses is one of our biggest proprietors of world-building information at this time. He works at the Potawatomi River Museum in Seneca, which is in modern-day Virginia. Despite the game taking place in the United States, Ulysses doesn't use the modern name here. Additionally, in one of the lines where Kai receives a gift, he explicitly mentions the phrase Eastern Territory. So perhaps this America wasn't colonized to the degree real-life America was. Also, in talking with Ulysses, we find that physical books aren't really sold anymore. Damon's apparently never seen one outside of a library or museum, which is very concerning, but I don't have time to unpack all that. Ulysses' tendency to jot everything down proves him invaluable in trials, even when he wasn't directly involved. He's also disabled, having anosmia or the inability to smell. This is revealed to us in Chapter 1, but is hinted at in the prologue when he asks for someone to describe the smell of the sleeping gas. Since he also mentions his body not producing enough hormones, I'm led to believe that his condition is Kallman syndrome, though this is just my best guess. This is a weird compliment, but I like how his memory works. It's been shown that he has trouble remembering the mundane, but historical facts come easy to him. I find myself much the same, though with things like Splatoon weapons or Danganronpa character names. Quite frankly, I'm not sure how to end his section of the video. He's nice and he's introverted and I like him. I like his voice. I want to tuck him in bed. I hope he's still with us for another chapter. Wenona is someone I mostly like, but can't say that I like with the entirety of my chest. Girl dislikes unions. I am very much pro-union and pro-workers getting paid what they deserve. Why don't you like unions, Wenona? Do you value income over people? You did say that you wanted financial reparations for being kidnapped the very first time Damon spoke to you. You're not afraid of belittling someone in the name of business? And your clan is pretty wealthy considering they give $1.5 million handouts to people. She does mention her company partakes in sustainable farming though, so I really don't know. Wenona's kind of like Damon in the prickish department, but she actually does know when to keep her mouth shut. Thus far, she's not let fear faze her. but she also doesn't put blind faith in others. I honestly think she would be the type to see a dead body, make the exact face seen in this sprite, say, "nasty," and walk away. I could ramble on about the world building in her FTEs, but unlike with Ulysses, who gives me stuff I can analyze and make conclusions from, Wenona's talking points are just flat out facts. Though she does talk about the UTP, and based on her words, I think differing opinions on the organization could lead to a greater calamity, like the ultimate hunt lie that was so integral to the plot of V3. Though I do tend to think Damon is harsh, I think there is something to be looked into regarding how she acquired farmland from neighboring clans. While the clans may have just agreed to it, did they feel pressure from Wenona to give her their farmland? Just how does this woman go about a business deal? Is she a master of making offers you can't refuse? Right now, she presents as someone who has good intentions, but goes about them in ways I can't endorse. The lack of human empathy in big business is something I'll never be able to wrap my head around. And finally, the man of the hour himself, Wolfgang Akire. In my initial playthrough, I was suspicious of Wolfgang immediately. I mean, a character with wolf in his name wearing a sheep pin? The phrase, "a wolf in sheep's clothing," is certainly being evoked here. Getting his blackmail later on only solidified things further. I thought to myself, oh, this guy's gonna be important. And then he died. And I thought to myself, oh, this guy's gonna be important. Just perhaps more in death than in life. While I do have a theory for what he meant in his dying moments, the Danganronpa franchise isn't something that would leave this sort of question unanswered. I just don't know where in the story this answer might come up. My current hypothesis stems from the same Twitter mutual I mentioned earlier, who posed that it's possible that Wolfgang's dad murdered his mom. We know that Wolfgang greatly admires his mother from his FTEs, so if we presume he saw Diana as his mom while in the boiler room, and he felt that he did not live up to her legacy, it would make sense as to why he was so self-critical in his final moments. Being a first-hand witness of his father murdering his mother would also explain his sudden outburst regarding a woman being killed by a man in Cara's trial. Of course, Wolfgang is more than his father's murder, assuming that truly did happen. He's the metaphorical leader of the group up until his death. But like others, he too is a hypocrite for asking them to trust in each other, only to say that Damon and Eva should be excluded from the group for their less optimistic opinions. And for bringing a knife into the boiler room when he said he trusted people. I think it's interesting that Wolfgang refers to the women with honorifics. I thought he did this to the men too, but I couldn't find a single instance of him doing so in the footage I recorded. This probably stems from his career, but these are his classmates he's talking to, not his clients. This game is set in America, and while this America may be different from the one we know in real life, it seems that most of the group refers to each other by just first name, the same way I referred to my classmates when I was in school here in America. I think this respect for women may also come from his mother, but I can't be sure. As this script collected dust while I slaved away at work, I found myself coming to like Wolfgang more and more. He's ended up occupying a space in my brain right next to Sayaka Mizuno in characters I truly didn't start loving until after they were already gone. I even had to remake the tier list I'll be showing off in a few minutes because of this. I like his childishness. His inability to do laundry reminds me of myself, seeing as I was never taught how to do it in my childhood. I like that he almost has this Toshiko-ism to him as he asks Damon about his other classmates. And of course, I like that he gets under Damon's skin. But returning to the main narrative, I still think Wolfgang's a bit suspicious, and I do believe that he'll have an impact on the narrative post-mortem, whether that be through the grief of others, the impression he left on Diana, or anything else. I'll be honest here. I never knew how much I truly did not care for Monokuma until Tozu showed up. He's funny, he's theatrical, and he feels truly threatening, especially with Mara at his side. I'm not sure why, but Kodaka seems to have this habit of putting weird, gimmicky mascots in all of the games that he directs. And while Monokuma is pretty iconic and Monami is alright, they really do go down from there. I'm just not a fan of mascot characters as a genre. I have a hard time connecting to characters that aren't humanoid, so I suppose that's why Tozu sticks with me more. He has fun music, his vocal performance is great, and his presence feels off-putting and threatening in ways that Monokuma just doesn't. A character well done. Being a goat-headed figure with a humanoid body, it's possible that Tozu is referencing Baphomet, a pagan idol who is now most commonly associated with Satanism and the devil because it appears on the devil card in the popular Rider-Waite tarot deck. But who knows, maybe it's just a coincidence. Fun fact, Tozu used to have hair. I think making him bald was the right decision, though. Makes him weirder. Mara is someone who's hard to talk about. She hasn't said a word, and all she's done is shoot someone. We can't really say anything about the motives of a character that hasn't spoken yet. What I can talk about is her animal symbol, the Black Panther. Black panthers are actually leopards or jaguars. They are stealthy, solitary hunters, which matches what we've seen of Mara so far. I'm interested in seeing her relationship with Tozu. What kind of bond do they have? Are they co-workers? Are they related? In love? I mean, Tozu does call the currency Mara bucks when he could have easily called them Tozu bucks. She will be getting a voice, so she will say things later. I suppose that if I remake this video for later chapters, I'll be able to say something more about her then. Cara Koskinen, aka the victim in the Prologue trial. Like Mara before her, it's hard to judge her actions as a character because we haven't heard her speak, let alone seen her real body. I was shocked to see her during Eva's execution, but I think she acts as a great symbolic piece here. Eva reaching out one last time, trying to put her faith in others, only for it to be snuffed out the way it has been so many times in her life. For a character I had previously seen as having finished their purpose in the narrative, this really changed things. Now, I'm just throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks here, but I think Cara is going to be someone who shows up in the story again, the same way I predict with Wolfgang. Maybe she'll even be a part of every execution, like how the Monokubs were executed one by one alongside the students in V3. Also, does anyone else think it's weird how eerily similar Mara and Kara's names are? Are these two possibly related? Could Mara have killed Cara? And that mystery ends up being something we uncover later, like the truth of V3's first chapter in the 6th trial? I think that'd be cool. She has a cute design. I hope we get to learn more about her. Who the heck is Damian? Why, he's the calendar guy, a joke character created by Nefast who was inserted into the game. There's little nods to him beyond the calendars, like on the storage room boxes and Mark misremembering Damon's name. I hope he stays as a joke character. I also hope to be able to get a master collection of all of his pinups one day. Not because I'm attracted to him, but because I like to archive stuff from this game. Phew, that's all the characters. So here's the tier list I mentioned in the beginning. Characters will likely move around as the story is revealed, but as of the upload date of this video, here are my current standings. Comparatively, this next section on everything else will be a lot shorter. Attention ain't easy to sustain in this economy, after all. First up, the music. The music is really good. You can feel the Danganronpa inspiration in each track. If someone played one Danganronpa game and you replaced the next game's music with Eden's Garden music, they probably wouldn't even be able to tell, except for the execution music being out of sync. But they'd still probably jam out, cause that song's really good too. Gameplay is generally nice and smooth. The hallways chugged a bit sometimes, but this was relatively minor and didn't impact my enjoyment. Minigames are generally good. Not looking at you. I don't entirely understand the pachinko machine, but it didn't frustrate me at least. Very rarely a typo can be seen throughout the game. I'm the type to notice them quickly, but I can't really blame the team with a script this long. Overall, it felt really goddamn amazing to be able to play a Danganronpa and not have it entirely spoiled for me. And it was free! Seriously, I cannot put into words how epic this is for a non-profit project. But moving on to the non-epic part. The argument altercation. Oh my god, this was dreadful. I'm not exactly sure how difficulty in the mainline franchise works, but I've always been told you end up missing some stuff unless you pick the hardest difficulty. So I picked mean for both logic and action. And then, without warning, I am thrust into Touhou. And look, I've played Touhou before. I'm not good at it, but I've played it. I could not beat this minigame on mean. I tried. Oh my god, did I try. I even got to the 3rd stage on some of my runs. But once the crows come out, I cannot dodge them for the life of me, and my HP is not enough to survive them. If there were checkpoints or something, I would not mind things being this hard, but there's a difference between a challenge that is fun and a challenge that is unnecessary and anger-inducing. The devs said they wanted to make PTAs that were better than the mainline games. And honestly, I haven't played them in the mainline games beyond Leon's, I think, since I basically ended up reading Danganronpa as opposed to playing it. But I think this is a step back. Even on Kind, I ended up having to use Microsoft Power Toys to remap the key bindings to be more Touhou-styled. I knew that you could use the arrow keys to move around in the base game, which was helpful, but the placement of the left hand was awkward using the F, Shift, and Space keys. From what I've heard through the grapevine, the devs seem to have agreed this was too hard, and this will be handled by a different programmer in the future. Thank God for that. At least I didn't end up having to do some stupid word search. And that sums up just about everything I thought about the game so far. If you actually managed to sit through all of that yap, thank you so much. Or if you just skipped to see what I thought of your favorite character, that's okay too. This game came to me at a really rough time in my life. I won't go into detail about that, but being able to lose myself in this new fictional world definitely helped me cope with all the crazy things going on in the real world. To every developer, writer, artist, voice actor, composer, musician, and everyone else that brought this game to life thus far, thank you for your hard work and dedication. You've created something absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to see more. I'll hopefully see you guys again after the next chapter releases. Mahi Megan out. Peace!
Jean Numbers.